Welcome to another episode of the Get Out Swim podcast. I'm your host, Seamus T. Quinn, and today I'm joined by Andrew Sheaff. Andrew, thanks for hopping on.
Thanks, Seamus. Great to be here.
Cool. Well, good. So, I have been looking for more tips and skills to add to my arsenal of coaching. And your name popped up when I was looking for skills and drills about, I'd say maybe a year ago now. And so I've been following along your page and all the technique breakdown that you do, video analysis. And so that kind of sparked the idea to invite you onto this podcast, and obviously happy to have you. But yeah, I want to start there. I don't know you personally, so I just tell us about kind of yourself, what you do in the swim community, and sort of how you've grown your social media presence to what it is now.
Yeah. So I grew up, I started swimming pretty late. I started swimming in high school. And so I came to it, not realizing it at the time, but so I was a decent athlete. And so kind of picked some things up relatively quickly. But I realized that much later that I did not have a strong swimming background and didn't really have a strong skill background. And so, I was growing, I was training. And so it didn't really catch up to me until I got to college. And all of a sudden, you realize, I'm not getting bigger, I'm not necessarily going to be able to get that much stronger. And all of a sudden I can't go faster. And, it kind of came back to not having a particularly good skill background. And so that's kind of what got me interested in it. Started getting interested in trying to find ways to help myself improve, and ultimately kind of got interested in coaching. And that was a huge lens that, I guess I was biased towards, was that skills really do matter, because if they're not there, there's not a whole lot you can do to find a way to get faster. And so got into college coaching, coached at several schools, did that for about 16 or 17 years. Last couple of years, kind of transitioned out of that and do more from a consulting standpoint with skill development, other coaches, with teams, and then also with organizations. And so that's kind of become what's particularly interesting to me, is that side of the sport. However, at the same time, I quickly realized that you can't just have kids do drills at slow speeds and just work on technique, quote unquote, because there is a huge training demand that needs to be met at the same time. And so if you're doing some skill work and then they go train, and then the skills are performed really poorly when they train, which is, pretty typical, there's no connection between the two. And ultimately that's not going to show up in races. And so it was finding ways to help swimmers develop skills in a training context, in a group context, and do so in a meaningful way that actually showed up in races, which has become what I am most interested in. And so that's the kind of big picture problem that I'm trying to solve. And so you'd asked about social media. And so, well, basically, I like sharing ideas, and that's how it kind of started. I just started posting about things that I found interesting, that I thought other people weren't necessarily talking about. And again, kind of in the lens of, how do you integrate skill development into training? Because really, it shouldn't be these two separate processes, and it's got to be kind of this integrated approach that is ultimately most effective. And so I just kind of started doing it, and in most things in life, it's really awful at first, and no one listens, and no one cares, and no one's interested. Slowly over time, I've figured out a little bit how to make it a little bit more engaging, a little bit more appealing, both in terms of the visual aspect of it too, but also in terms of the information. And so I certainly don't have any magic tricks about that, other than be willing to be bad at something for a long time and just keep doing the same old thing over and over again. Slowly you kind of learn and you kind of get better at certain aspects of it, which really isn't too dissimilar to swimming. It's not really a surprise, or people kind of know what they have to do, but it can be difficult to actually make it happen.
For sure. Yeah. And so I'm curious, as a swimmer yourself, were you focused on your skills and sort of your technique from back when you were a swimmer, or was this something that sort of grew in sort of interest as you started coaching more and coaching at the collegiate level? Where did that sort of growth
So
happen?
I think it became apparent. Yeah, it became apparent to me in college that this was a real problem for me, and probably not until my sophomore year, where it became evident that I wasn't just going to keep getting better because it was I was a year older. And so that's when it really became an interest of mine. And so it's kind of, first it's like, well, what are people actually doing? And what are good skills? Like that was kind of the first step. Then I'm trying to think about it. It really didn't make much progress because again, I'm trying to just think about things rather than, having an organized approach to actually develop them. And so that's when it kind of really, really got started. And then as I get more into coaching, you start trying to find more solutions. And, as with the social media stuff, you just keep trying stuff. A lot of it doesn't work. And then slowly you find something that works a little bit. And it's like, all right, well, what just happened here? And how can I double down on that? How can I find something else that's similar? And then you kind of go from there and you slowly build out the skill set. And so it was something that was of interest to me before I started actually coaching. And then once you actually start to implement some of this stuff and you start to see the real problems of what it's like to, it's fine to read something in a book, but when you have a summer in front of you, you have a workout in front of you, you have a set in front of you, you have a bunch of kids in front of you, how are you actually going to do something that results in a pretty meaningful change pretty fast? Because again, like if you're just going to be like, think about your hand position for the next 6 months and hopefully you'll swim faster, like that's not going to be a super effective approach. And most kids are going to give up on that after about 10 minutes. So, that's kind of when the real learning started, when, you're seeing the results or lack of results of your efforts and you're trying to figure out, all right, what do I do better and how can I fix this?
Right. And what's your messaging like then with people that you work with coaches that you work with? How are you trying to get, your message across?
Well, so I think the biggest thing is that the perception of what skill development is that one, it's a coach telling swimmers what to do. They do it. And then the coach says, yes, that was good. No, that was not good. Do a little bit more of this. Like it's very instruction focused. And, sometimes there's some drills on top of that, which again, like it's like, do this drill and I'm going to tell you if it was good or not. And from my perspective, what I found to be much more effective is that if you design sets, if you design workouts that basically force swimmers to do things much more effectively, or it makes it much easier for them to do things much more effectively, that's where you're going to get the most impact. Because again, if kids can't just like, if you talk to like people that try to meditate and like, it's like people can't focus for more than 30 seconds at a time. But like if you just say like, just follow your breath or whatever, it's like literally 30 seconds, people can't do it. So how are we going to expect? But if you keep reminding them every 30 seconds, they can kind of keep staying on track. But obviously you can't just verbally remind kids all the time. So you need activities that do that for it. And you need to write sets that do that for them. And so then, again, if people can't, meditate for 30 seconds at a time, how are they going to focus for 2 hours on one skill when their heart rate's 180 and they're being yelled at to go 108 instead of 109 or whatever? Like that's not happening. So you have to design workouts that offload the attention span because kids don't have a choice. Like they have to do it this way. They have to do it in a way. And again, like you can't just rely on willpower. Obviously the kids have to try hard. Obviously they have to care. Obviously they have to be engaged. But that's very different than thinking about this abstract concept, like I need to bend my elbow at 90 degrees. They have no idea if it's at 90 degrees. Like they can't, like there's no connection between what they're expected to do and concrete feedback. And so that's kind of the big shift that I'm a big advocate of is how can you design the workouts so that 90%, again, I made up that number, but a very large part of the coaching is done for you. And then the what you do communicate, which still has to be, because again, if you have 30 kids, like you have to always be communicating to get to all of them. That communication is going to be that much more impactful because they are already getting a large amount of feedback. The problem that they are trying to solve is already much clearer to them. And your job is to help them figure it out as opposed to just being like, do this, that looked good, great job. Like, and most coaches don't even try, like a lot of them don't even bother doing that because they know it doesn't work. And kids, they just kind of tune that out because 9 times out of 10, it doesn't result, like they can't see the impact of that. And so that's where, again, like if we do a set and we're working on something and they see their stroke count change, like in that set, or they can see that their times improve that's going to get them to buy into that stuff because they can actually see that what they're doing is making a difference. And I know I'm kind of ranting or rambling a little bit, but that's a big problem when coaches say kids don't buy into skill development because you haven't shown them that it actually makes a difference. Why would you ever do something that's more work if you can't, if there's no obvious benefit to it? Like no sane person is going to do that. I'm just going to do this because I was told, even though it clearly is not helping me. And so that's a huge aspect of it. You got to show them that it works. And again, if you can write sets that are set up to give them feedback, they can see the progress, not like 6 months from now, but like today. And that's where it makes a huge difference. I mean, I had that happen today, like girl struggling, but like, she could see the change, and it's like, I get it. Like that made a difference. And that's kind of what your ultimate, or what I think is ultimately a better path to improving skills.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. They need to see how it's impacting their swimming, how it's benefiting their swimming. So, can you give an example of how
Yeah.
you would integrate that into a set?
Yeah. So something I'm doing today, just because it's on top of mind. So some breaststrokers, senior swimmers, we're working on timing at speed. So if you have them swim breaststroke underwater, it's almost like, so breaststroke. All right. So skill development. First of all, you got to know what they have to be able to do, like in big picture terms. What are the key skill that you are trying to identify? Then you design a set to improve that one skill. So as opposed to just having them swim a set, looking and seeing what they do, oh, Johnny's not breathing well. I'm going to tell Johnny to improve his breathing. Susie's dropping her elbow. I'm going to tell Susie to stop dropping her elbow. You pick a skill that you know is critical, and then you write a set to address that specific skill. And then all your communication is about that skill, nothing else, because that is the focus of the set. And if obviously there's more than one skill that they have to work on, but of course over the course of the week, you have multiple opportunities to write lots of different sets. You can cover everything. So I think that's a huge mistake, is reactive technical coaching as opposed to like preemptive. This is the skill that we want to develop. Let's do it. So we were working on timing, sprint work, and breaststroke. So if you have swimmers swim breaststroke underwater, effective timing is the arms and then the legs. So the arms are pulling when the legs are in line, and the legs are kicking when the arms are in line. So it's pretty simple, but it's very difficult to do at very high speeds because it has to be like bam, 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 and it can't overlap. So a lot of kids really struggle with that. If you have breaststrokers swim underwater, like literally swim breaststroke underwater, if they mess the timing up, they will literally come to a stop, and they can feel that, and that concrete feedback prevents them from doing it. So even kids that are bad at breaststroke, they will tend to do that drill very, very well. So what I was having them do is they go 825s. The odds are underwater breaststroke. The evens are regular breaststroke. Each pair of two, they're going to take one more stroke, and they have to go faster. So whatever, they take 7 strokes on the first underwater breaststroke, and they get a time. They take 5 strokes on the surface breaststroke, they get a time. Then it's 8 and 6, 9 and 7, and then 10 and 8. And each time they have to go faster. So as the stroke count goes up, that timing is going to be more and more compressed. And we're helping them figure out how to manage their skills at a range of stroke counts. And we're using the drill to force them to feel the effective timing, and then they try to apply it. And so what they're learning is, so one, the concrete feedback. First, the drill doesn't really let them do it poorly. So that encourages them to use the effective skills, and then they can try to apply that on the swim. The stroke counts give them objective feedback, because if the stroke count goes up, like they have to, they can tell how long they were swimming by the number, and the time gives them feedback too. So let's say they go from 7 strokes to 8 strokes, and they go the same time or slower. They know that they didn't do an effective job with timing that. They may not know why exactly, and maybe I can give them a little bit of help with that, but they get very clear feedback. Humans are problem solvers. When they have a clear goal and they have clear feedback, they will figure it out eventually. Maybe not today, maybe not next week, but in a couple of weeks, they will. And that will be a real change that sticks. And they're learning it at speed. So again, it's more likely to show up in a race. That's very, very different approach than saying we're going 1050s breaststroke. They're all fast. Think about your timing. And I'm going to say, no, you're too short. No, you're too long. You got to wait for the pull. All these things that are totally out of context. They have no meaning. And again, they don't even know if they're doing it. All they're relying on to know if it's effective or not is if I say it looks good, which kids don't really care about. But if they can see that, they're hitting a certain stroke count, they're hitting a certain time, and then when we repeat the set the second time, they're better at each step, they know that they are executing at a higher level. And so that type of thinking can be applied to every single skill that matters, and it can be applied to any type of training set. You just have to have the right toolbox, and you have to have the right framework in terms of how to apply it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it makes sense cognitively for the swimmers to be thinking, okay, I'm hitting the stroke count, like the direct feedback, getting a time, stroke count, whatever it is, that that's going to engage them that much more rather than their coach kind of.
Yeah. And they don't
Yeah.
have to think about their technique. They just have to do the set. The set
Right.
forces them to do it. Like, and that's the thing. It's like there's no separation between the two. And we could do that same exact set, same exact concepts. It could be hundreds. And the goals will be a little bit different. Now we're training some sort of endurance. It could be race 50s. Now we're training more race stuff. Like, the same concept can be applied in any type of training context. You just have to have the right, again, a clear goal. You got to have some tools, and then you got to figure out how to make it work together. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I was going to ask too, like, how do you expand on 820? You gave a good example with the 825s, but how do you expand on that afterwards? If you're in a 2-hour time block or an hour and a half time block, however long you have.
Yeah. So that would be the set for. So say the whole practice is breaststroke, which especially
Sure.
like for senior athletes, that might be the case. Especially breaststroke specialists.
Yeah.
At a club level, developmental swimmers, that's probably their breaststroke work for the day. So you don't need to do that. So you have whatever, you have
Sure.
another 90 minutes of practice. We're going to go do some underwater stuff. Same idea, pick one skill, pick a training context that you want to work in, get after it. And so that's where it's like, and like I said earlier, you've got all these skills that you got to develop. You've got a week worth of stuff. You're just finding different places to make sure you hit everything that matters. So in a let's say in the senior context, which this workout was, so that's their speed work for timing. If the whole workout is speed focused, all right, now we're going to do a set that's pull based, like to work on the upper body skill. We could do a set that's kick based to help work on the propulsion of the legs. We can work pull outs. We could work alignment, to making sure that they're keeping drag low. And again, like, you use the same basic ideas. You've got different like underwater breaststroke isn't the tool there, and stroke counts may or may not be the tool there, but you have other tools for other skills. And so
Sure.
that's how that's what the whole workout could look like. I tend to try to focus from a training standpoint. Like, if it's a speed day, that's what most of that work is going to be. And so, but again, like, it could be any training context. It doesn't really matter. You just, again, it's what skills am I going to work on? Then you which set am I going to work on those skills? And then you write the set from there.
Yeah. No, I like it. So then what should the focus be for, let's talk about, club coaching, age group coaching, where we're developing habits and skills and all of this, like to hopefully set up our athletes to want to pursue swimming after and in college or professional, whatever it is. And just to have retention and longevity, like what should we be focusing on as club coaches then?
Well, I mean, I'm not a club coach. I don't want to tell someone how to do their job. What I think what you can think of, what do you want your 18-year-old swimmers to be able to do when they are done their club swimming experience, whether that's the end of their career or whether they're taking the step to college swimming? What do you want them to be able to do? And from a skill standpoint, from a training standpoint, from everything. So that's the 18-year-old, like, that's the end zone that you're trying to get to. They come to you, they can probably barely swim, or maybe they can swim a 25 freestyle, and that's kind of it. So they're kind of going from zero to whatever the end zone is for you. And it can be different, like different clubs. Some people, they want everyone to be a miler. Some people, they want everyone to be awesome at 100 of stroke. It's not good or bad. It's what you want. Then it's just year by year, you're making progress to that. So it's like, what they have to do here, where they're starting at. What's one step back from the beginning, one step forward one step back from the end, one step forward from the beginning. And then you're just kind of meeting it there. But bigger picture, all the skills that are needed to go fast, they need to be learned somewhere along the line. The basic training elements, they've got to have general fitness. They've got to have some speed. They got to be able to race. That needs to be worked on, maybe not necessarily all at the same time, but at an age appropriate time throughout that let's call it 10 years as well. And so it's more about thinking, what do they actually have to do? And then for each group, what's going to be the focus for them? And then, now you've kind of condensed it to a year or two. And then what this week, what do we need to do to get them to where they need to be at the end of the group? And so having that thought process in terms of what do they actually have to be able to do? Let's work on that today. And again, you can't work on everything at the same time. And so you have to kind of think things through. Maybe the first part of the year, it's all, I'm just making, it could be anything. We're really really focused on body position. Then we start working on this part the second half of the year or whatever it is. And you can do it in any number of ways, as long as you're addressing all the stuff that really matters and making sure it's done consistently and done well. Because there are kids that are good enough that they will just figure it out. That's, you're going to coach like one or two of those in your life. And so everyone else,
right.
They need help.
For sure. Yeah. And you talk about that. I see in your reels, you say, you want to be teaching skills. We need skills and we need fitness in order to, kind of get to the speed. So what's the fitness side of it? Because, does that just mean swimming, a ton, or like, what does the fitness side of it mean to you?
Yeah. Well, so they got to be able to do stuff that's fast, and they got to be able to swim for a decent amount of time. And so if you want it, so I always like to tie it to the skill stuff, because it makes it easier to do everything at the same time. So whatever skills you think are important, they got to be able to do those fast. And so there is a fitness component to that. And so instead of thinking about, I want to improve my anaerobic glycolysis or whatever terms that, people say that, don't really no one really understands what they mean. They just kind of know what they're saying. They've got to be able to practice things going fast. And they've got to be able to execute those skills going fast. So practice those skills going fast. They also have to be able to do those skills over and over and over again for a long period of time. So that's where you're building your aerobic fitness. But it's not just like building your aerobic fitness. You're building the consistency and the sustainability of their skills, and they're getting better at that as they go from age 10. They can't hold it together for a 25. They train for a year, they can kind of do it pretty, looks decent enough for a 50. And then it just keeps going, beyond that as they expand their training ability. But it's not fitness just for fitness sake. It's the ability to execute skills at a high level, high being relative to, to their age and everything, over longer and longer periods of time. Because if you do that, the fitness stuff is going to take care of itself. And so I think, there are teams that do a lot of swimming. The ones that are really successful, those kids swim well the entire time. The ones that are kind of successful, they get kids to work hard, they get fit, they do pretty well, but their skills are crap. And so those kids aren't at the same level as some of these clubs that do swim a lot, but they do it at a very, very, very high level. And that's going to be the key differentiator. And so there's a lot of ways to approach the fitness problem, but basically kids have to be able to swim well when they're going fast. They have to be able to swim well over longer periods of time. And as they get older, they got to be able to swim well when they're really, really tired too.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm just thinking back to like something I did yesterday with my age group swimmers. Like we were doing backstroke, and so I was like, all right, after warming up a little bit, we're going to go through a backstroke progression drill, which I'll run, on a week-to-week basis, especially this early in the season. I just want to see how their body position is, their head position, and trying to instill that in them through repetition. But I guess this is making me think like how
would you do that?
How much they're benefiting from like doing a drill progression and then into a set, or if you would work that skill in, that's where I'm like,
All right. So say they do, let's say they do 825s a drill, and then they go do 8100s backstroke. What you could do is go 125 a drill. And so, all right, so you're thinking of the set. I want to work on body position. I want to work on their alignment. And so that sounds like what that drill stuff was based on. So that's the goal of the set. So what you do, we're doing 125 of that drill, lock it in. All right, kids, can you make this happen during this next 100? And some of them will be decent, some of them will be awful, some will be somewhere in between. And then you just do that 8 times. And so every time they get to reconnect with what they're trying to do, and then they see if they can make it happen. Reconnect. And so now early in the season, you might need to do 425s of the drill and 150 backstroke because they can't do it. Like they don't have it. A month from then, maybe it's 125 drill and 150. And then another month, maybe it's 125 drill and then 100. And so in that example, they've demonstrated the ability to progressively one, they can execute the skill at a better level, and then they can do it for longer and longer and longer and longer. And you could even do stuff where it's like, all right, it's 25 drill, 25 swim, stuff like that. But I think the key thing too is once they can do that drill reasonably well, start doing it faster, start doing it harder, just do it, like train it. And so I think a mistake, just train the drill. Like, so example, underwater breaststroke, they're sprinting, they're going as fast as they can. Like I've done it, that particular drill, we're doing pace 50s. First one's underwater breaststroke, second one's 25 breaststroke. My expectation is you go just as fast. And so that's another key concept, is that if you want to be good at this, you've got to find drills that you can actually train. And so like one arm freestyle, not my favorite thing in the world anyway, but you can't train it. You can't, like, it's not something that like it's going to get their heart rate up. It's not something you can do particularly fast. Like, yeah, if you really make them do it, but there's nothing about it that like really fits into like a training set. And that's where for every skill, it's like, I am always looking for the drill, the strategy, the whatever that forces them to do things well that I can train, because that gives me so much more flexibility to actually help them get to the point where, one, they can do it when they swim, because I'm sure you've seen, every day kids can execute the drill well, they go to swim, looks like trash. And so
it's separate, because it's separate from the swimming. Like we always see okay, let's do the drills. All right, and then let's swim. And the drills, like, and in their minds too, it's like this,
they're two separate things
from swimming. It's a separate. I mean, that's how I thought of drills when I was swimming. I'd be like, we're doing drills. Okay. I would never like really connect it.
And so that's exactly the thing. And that's the thing. It's like that you write the sets where they get the message real quick. This is the workout. This is not like this, let's focus on our technique, woo-woo, like, whatever. It's like, this is the set. This is what you have to do. This needs to be good. And like, you need to do it fast. So like breaststroke example, it's like, I do 2 kicks, 1 pull fast all the time. Like, just because I want them to be good at one, that's a timing thing too. But also like, it forces them to figure out, how can I use my legs to create speed in a manner that is more similar to breaststroke than something else. And so most drills.
What would you do for freestyle? What would be something you do for freestyle? Because you mentioned one arm not really working, but what would be?
All right. So one thing that's good. So especially younger kids you're dealing with, it's like Stevie Wonder, when they're swimming, put a paddle on their head and then tell them, don't let the paddle come off. And if their head's moving, it's coming off every single time. And so at first, if they're really bad, don't even worry about breathing, but then make sure that they can get the breath in without, like, because their head, if this is their head, it's like this every time they breathe, like the whole stroke falls apart. And so rather than you being like, Johnny, keep your head down, Johnny, get that breath faster, just put the paddle on their head and you don't have to say anything, because they'll,
they'll do it.
They learn right away. Exactly. So from a timing standpoint, one thing that I like is like, I call it underwater recovery, something some people call it long dog, but like where they actually have to rotate forwards with their body and then the arms are connected to their body, because if you ask them to go fast with it, they have to figure out that connection. And then what you can do after that is one arm over the water, one arm under, because that's kind of like an intermediate step between freestyle. And so from a timing standpoint, that can be really effective too. And again, like it depends on what skill you want to develop.
To work on.
And so like another thing that's good is just helping them hold water, lots of different hand positions. So like closed fist, okay sign, horns, like that, having paddles, like this forces them to use their hand and forearm together, or you can have them pinch it too. It forces them to be stable with their wrist. And then like, all right, we're going to go 425s with the upside down paddles. You're going to have a buoy in. You got to take less strokes every time. And so that forces them to figure out, how do I move more water each stroke? And I've got to learn how to do it with the forearm. And so to me, if they're struggling with that, I can have a conversation that's way more effective than, they're just swimming back and forth. And I'm saying, keep your elbow up. Because one, this is going to force them to use their whole arm. Two, the numbers are going to tell us where they're struggling, what they're struggling to make happen, where they're falling off. And again, like there's no discussion about it. If they were supposed to take 12 strokes and they took 13, they can't say, I am thinking about it, coach, which is the conversation that everyone has every day when it's like, Johnny, you're not thinking about your elbow. And they're like, yes, I am. Um, but if the numbers are the numbers, it is
Yeah,
what it is. You're not doing what you
there's
need to
nothing
do.
there.
It's not a confrontation, but it's just, this is what we have to figure out, and we got to find a way to help you get there. And so that makes conversations about skills much easier, because again, if they're struggling with their breath and this thing comes off every time, there's no discussion as to whether they're having a problem or not. It's obvious to me, it's obvious to them. But if they're just
Yeah,
but if they have a late breath or whatever and they can't even feel it, and I'm like, dude, that's wrong. That's wrong. And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Um, and with the paddle, even if it comes off every time and they have no idea what to do about it, they at least know they have a problem. And
right.
that's a thing too. And so, like, going back to the stroke count stuff with the breaststroke, if they can't change the stroke counts, again, they know they have a problem. They might not be able to solve it, and that's kind of what coaching is for. But they're much more invested in fixing the problem because they know they have it, especially when their teammates are not having that same problem.
Mm. Do you think kids should be thinking about their stroke counts even at a young age? Like,
Yeah,
when it comes to each stroke, like just being aware of what their stroke counts
aware.
are and trying to
Yeah.
being, intentional with
So
that?
yeah, and so like you don't even have to ask them to change them, especially at first, because the magic of that stuff is they start to change anyway, just because they're being aware
Yeah,
of it.
right.
And so again, like, it's a skill that is super valuable. And so, like, in a college situation, kids would come to me, never counted strokes before in their life. And it was a month it was a pain in the ass because they didn't want to do it. They didn't think, like, they had to learn this thing where they had to, like, develop the habit. Eventually, about a month in, they'd have some sort of breakthrough and they'd be like, this is the best thing ever. I'm glad I did this. But before that, it's a pain because they haven't established that habit. If you get 8-year-olds that don't know any better, it's easy. They're not going to complain about it because they don't know any. And for
Mhm.
some, it's cool because they can see themselves getting better. Whereas, um, you know, otherwise they just feel like they're drowning every day because they don't know how to swim for all intents and purposes. But they can see that, hey, those numbers are getting a little bit better, or I was able to do 2 of those today instead of 1. And so again, like, it's not about trying to lock them into like specific stroke counts. Like, if you're 8 years old, you have to take 13 strokes. Just having an awareness and developing that skill of being conscientious about that is a huge investment later on when you start to actually try to mess with that stuff to try to get them to change things.
Right, right. Yeah. And speaking of your time working at the college level, what
Mm-hmm.
did you learn from working with, like elite level athletes at the college level and, I guess watching their skills and their patterns
Yeah.
and whatnot? Like what did you learn during that time?
So I think, so one thing that certainly learned is, if you're around a lot of other really effective coaches, you're picking stuff up all the time, just because everyone, there are always any problem you are trying to solve, someone else has solved it somewhere at some
Mm,
time. And so it's always super helpful for that. I think one thing that is useful for any coach is that if you can ever be around like really really fast swimmers, you can understand what, like, that actually looks like, not in terms of the visual aspect, which can be important, but just like seeing people do crazy stuff changes your perspective about what fast is. And so
mm,
again, like, that can be super valuable because you realize that what actually is possible. And that changes your perspective when you go to another context where maybe the performance expectations aren't the same, and maybe they're not necessarily realistic to that level, but you see what's actually possible. And so I think that can be a very eye-opening experience as well. And again, like, if you watch a lot of good swimming, your brain kind of gets like pattern recognition as to what good looks like. And so that
yeah.
is also helpful too when you work with anyone. It's like, this is what good looks like, and they're like over this. There's like a mismatch, and you can start to pick that up a little bit better. And so I think
Mm,
in general, if you want to be good at something, it's super helpful to be around people that are doing that really really well. And so I think that was in many ways one of the most valuable aspects of just seeing really elite athletes and working with really elite athletes.
Were there any examples or like certain swimmers that you worked with that kind of stood out as far as their the way they would train or skill develop in just their kind of their habits, their daily habits?
Yeah, at UVA, like Kate Douglas and Gretchen Walsh would just do crazy stuff, like stuff you probably wouldn't even believe if I told you. And just like stuff like that, like you just see people that can just they're at a really high level, and then they're able to do things in training that are like at 99% of what their capacities are. Whereas like some kids that hit 200 pace and think they had like an amazing day just because they did 150 at 200 pace, and it's just like they're just like a whole nother level of what fast is. And so I think that's something that you just is just kind of like burned in your brain.
Yeah. And so you spent a good amount of time in college coaching, sort of
Mm-hmm.
as like the initial career plan. What sort of led to the shift to then kind of do your own thing and kind of start consulting and whatnot?
I think it was just more aligned with what I'm really interested in and enjoy spending my time doing. I think that's probably the biggest aspect of it. You only kind of got one life, and so you might as well spend it spending as much of it doing the things that you enjoy the most. And so that was probably the biggest impetus for that.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And you wrote and published a book called "A Constraints-Led Approach to Swimming."
Mm-hmm.
What was the process like for writing a book like that, and what did you learn kind of through that process?
So I learned, I guess, I was actually thinking about this recently because I had to do a similar version of it. Was so writing a book for me was not particularly difficult in the sense that I was able to I had a lot of ideas. I could write them down and I could
Hmm.
make them somewhat I could communicate them somewhat intelligently. The
Sure.
challenge was editing it, because I am like a big picture person. I don't like detail. Like I not that I don't like details, but like details that don't matter to me are incredibly frustrating to me. If I forgot to
Mm,
put an S on the end of a word, I can't see that. Like it drives. Like I'm never gonna pick it up. Like I was recently editing something, and like I was using just an editor, and it like showed me the original and showed me the edited sentence. And like I can't see the difference. So like, and it's just like
sure, sure.
it's some stupid thing is missing, and like I just can't pick up on that. So that was not fun. I did not enjoy that aspect of it, because again, it's like what's challenging about, I guess, a book is that you can't, like, we're having a conversation. If I say something you don't understand it, or I don't explain it well, you can just say, "Hey, can you say this again?" I'm like, "Oh, it's like this," and you're like, "Oh, got it." You get one
Yeah,
shot at it in writing, and if the reader doesn't get it, it's not their problem, it's your problem. And so going back through everything, again, like those little details and trying to make sure everything was as clear as possible, was something that was not that much fun for me. But I very much enjoyed kind of putting my ideas down. It helps with just your ability to think through things. So that was cool. I guess kind of making that into something that someone would want to read was more difficult.
yeah. And with time removed now from sort of publishing, releasing that book out, I guess what have you learned in that kind of time as well?
Yeah, so the book itself was a little bit more conceptual, and so I think that
Hmm.
those major concepts, there's like 100 sets in there that are practical examples of the ideas. So it's not like it's not just a bunch of woo woo. It's useful. Um,
Yeah.
so that basic framework probably hasn't changed very much. I think I continue to evolve in terms of how I apply those ideas, because like everyone,
Mm,
I'm still learning, and so you find little tricks, you pick up stuff from other coaches. I can use that. I can use this. I can do it in this way. It worked with this kid. Didn't work with this kid. What do I have to do to make that change? So those type of things. I think I'm always like everyone is continuing to learn on that. There's some details about some skill stuff that you just start to become apparent the more time you spend with something. But I think a lot of it, I wouldn't the main ideas, I think, are pretty strong. And that was kind of the premise of it. Was it's not just like opinions, but what kind of actually is like fundamental, and then how can we build on finding ways to help swimmers learn those fundamentals, was kind of the big picture idea behind it.
yeah. Are there certain coaches or colleagues that you look to for, sort of input on certain things or advice, or I guess people that you've been learning from? sort of specifically, recently or over
Yeah.
time?
Yeah. So, the one thing, I when I was, in college and shortly after, I basically bought every swimming book that I could, and still, whenever I see one, regardless of who it was written by, whatever it is, I just buy it and read it because I will learn something, and even if it's just one thing for one specific skill that works for half people, like that's still a valuable aspect of it. So
Yeah.
there's been a lot of people that have certainly been influenced me on that front. Ernie McGleesco, if anyone listening to this hadn't bought his books, you should read those. Those are really, really good. He was a big influence. A guy named Sam Freeze was a big influence. He was a sprint coach that did some pretty crazy stuff in the '80s. And again, that was helpful for me. It's like there are other ways to do this. You can find other ways to be successful. You don't just have to do what everyone else has done beforehand. So that was really influential. Um, there was a skill development guy named Keith Davids that was really influential. And then certainly, just coaching colleagues and friends or people that I'm always learning from and bouncing ideas off of.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a certain sort of like set of books that you would recommend for a young coach to pick up, or, just to like, if you're
Yeah.
getting an introduction into coaching and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
trying to find a way?
Yeah. So I would read Swimming. Let's see if we can go five. Swimming Fastest by Ernie McGleesco. I would
Okay.
read Sprinting by Sam Freeze because, again, if your life has always been 10 200s, his book will change your perspective on that.
Mm,
There's these books, the Swim Coaching Bibles 1 and 2. Those are good
yeah.
because they are all it's like 20 chapters from 20 kind of world class coaches, each of them. And so there's
Mm,
a lot of different perspectives. The disadvantage of reading one person's book is that it contains all of their they've only
their
lived one
thoughts.
life,
Yeah.
and so so those are really good. So that I'll lump those together. So that was three. Dick Hanula wrote a book, Swimming Coaching or Coaching Swimming Successfully, I think it's called. That's really good.
Mm,
Um, and if you're more interested in the physiology stuff, Jan Ulbricht's Science of Winning is also
Science of
very
winning.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. And so, I mean, you're never going to be dumber by learning something. And so with anything, if there's a book that seems to be pretty popular by someone who seems to be reasonably respectable, I would read it. And then, of course, with everything, it's like another thing that was helpful for me is like, um, you only learn things by doing. So books are great for giving you ideas, but you only learn them when you apply them
Sure.
with your swimmers. And so you've got to, actually try stuff, and then you will find what seems to resonate with you, what seems to click with you, and then, go find more of that.
Yeah, totally. What have you learned kind of through the years, through your own coaching and being with athletes on a day to day, and sort of speaking to that, like maybe that you wouldn't have gathered from a book, or or
Um,
you would have thought
yeah,
early on.
yeah. Well, so I think the thing I mentioned earlier, have a specific skill development goal for every single set.
Mm,
I think that is very, very, very important because it will make your set writing better. It will have purpose. And so, for an example, if you, uh, everyone wants their kids to have a great last wall, what are you going to do to actually make that happen? And so then that's a very different set than we're just going to do some kicking or we're just going to do some underwater stuff.
mm,
If you design a set for that specific purpose, that's going to have, that's very different than we're just going to do some fast stuff and I expect you to have a good last wall. And so that type of thought process, I think, is extremely valuable. That didn't come to me for, I don't know, it took me 10 years to figure that out. So that has changed kind of much of what I coach. The second aspect of it is set them up to be successful. They should be having awesome practices 9 times out of 10. Like this idea that I'm going to challenge them, they're going to fail, it's going to be awesome, and then they'll learn. Like, you need to challenge kids, but you need to give them challenges that they can be, for the most part, successful. Because when people are successful, they want to do it again, and they
yeah.
want to up the challenge. And so
Mm,
swimming is hard enough. You do not need to go out of your way to make it difficult to the point where they are failing constantly. So
yeah.
setting them up to be successful, I think, is really, really, really important. Because if it's too easy, guess what? The solution is really easy too. Just make it a little bit harder, and sooner or later it'll be plenty hard. And so I think that's a really important thing that, again, like I didn't figure out soon enough. Those are the two things that
Yeah.
kind of really jump out to me.
Jump out. Yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah. It's making me think of just like more ideas of because yeah, you kind of I compartmentalize things I want to work on. So it's like, all right, we're going to work on turns, starts, breakouts, whatever it is, and sometimes I guess it's good a conversation to have because it's making me think of how can I work pieces into a set and have that idea conceptually rather than individually parsing out, okay, now we're going to
Yeah,
work on turns, now we're going to work on
yeah,
starts, now we're whatever,
yeah.
because then it's like, well, how are these flowing together, how are these
But
working?
you can have a start focused or a turn focused set that is
Yeah.
built into swimming. So like let's say you know whatever, we're going to do 10 minutes of turn stuff. That's very like,
Mm,
swim into the wall and I'll tell you if it was good or not. Like, and then you just go swim a set and there's no
yep.
there's no communication about the turns. There's not a focus on the turns. It's not set up for them to be good on their turns. Which do you think is going to show up in the race? The 10 minutes of stuff that had nothing to do with actually racing, or like it's just totally isolated, or the this very swimming like stuff that they didn't pay attention to their turns at all.
Yeah.
And so that's the reality. And so you can ignore that if you want, but you're going to keep getting kids that have. And when I say you, I don't mean like you personally, but like that's what's going to show up: crappy turns. And so if you can build it into the workouts and make it like and when I say as race-like as possible, I don't mean that like you're always going race pace and all that stuff, but just as
Mm,
similar to what they have to do in races, in training, whether that's aerobic training or speed training, or it doesn't really matter. That's what's going to show up. That's where they do most of their swimming. That's when they do most of their swimming with effort. That's when they do most of their swimming with intensity. And so if that stuff is not done at a high technical level, it doesn't matter because that's what's going to show up in races. And so it can still have value to do some things in a little bit of isolation, but you've got to move that into the real stuff as soon as possible and as thoroughly as possible. Otherwise, it's not going to show up. And again, kind of like using that breakout example, it's like you could have them do a couple like breakout drills. Then we're going to go 3 100s, nail the breakouts every time, and no matter what they do with any of the other stuff, don't say anything about their breathing. Don't say anything about their flip turns. Just make sure they're paying attention to their breakouts and whether they're nailing those. And then next set, you can do whatever you want. But like that, I think is something that is very much lost or missed. It's like you're not working on skills if it's not being trained.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, and it's a good point because you don't also want to overload, your swimmers with things to think about, especially early on. Like
Yeah,
pick a
because it can't.
skill.
One thing.
Yeah,
One thing.
right, right.
And
Yeah,
if you're worried about them not getting enough of the other stuff, plan your week so that you can make sure that all that stuff happens. Again, like it takes a little bit more work, but you can't say that skill stuff doesn't work if you're not willing to like actually plan to make it happen.
for sure. Yeah. Um, is there a kind of example or story of like someone you worked with where you were implementing a lot of this and you just saw the breakthrough? Like you were like, oh, this really worked. Like we nailed this specific skill over and over and over again, and then boom, like in the race, it's coming together. It's following through.
Yeah. So there was the first one that jumps to mind. Is there was this breaststroker that would just, great temp, like fast kid, good, great rate, but like he just spun through. And so it
Mm,
took maybe 6 months, a year of like doing lots of stuff where we're forcing him to try to find speed at lower stroke counts. And then all of a sudden, like, over the course of a year or two, it drops 3 seconds in 100 breasts and it was at an
wow.
elite, like already pretty good. So like it's about finding what the kids struggle with, and then it's like constantly reinforcing it and constantly doing it.
Yeah.
And like it's not just, hey, you need to figure out like just round the corners a little bit better or something like that. It's like he needs to figure out, you need to put him in situations where he has to do the stuff that he has to do. And even if it's not at the level he needs to do it at, again, going back to set them up to be successful, what can he do now that is good enough? It's not going to be perfect because he's still learning. Let's work at it at that level and then take the next step and then take the next step and then take the next
Mm,
step. Because if it's just, we're expecting you to be at this, like, this is what it takes to be good. You're right here. You need to do this. He can't. Like, no one can meet that standard. And so it's like meeting them where they're at, letting them have some success, making them want to try to keep doing it more, and then going from there.
mm, yeah. I like that. Um, is there anything you like to do outside of kind of your coaching and consulting to spend time away from swimming or the pool, or is it for the most part we're kind of all
Yeah.
into swimming?
Yeah, I mean, swimming's a big focus of my life at this point. I like being outside. I like being active. I like being doing stuff. I like doing stuff. I like seeing the sun as much as I can. It's a
Yeah,
big focus for
nice.
me.
Great. Any advice to, young coaches who kind of are trying to find their way? Like maybe they took a
Yeah,
similar approach and went into college for a while, but then sort of found their way to something else that they prioritize more, or, because we're all trying to figure out kind of our way to coach in alignment with ourselves. And I think sometimes there's a ordinary path that you might want to take, but then you find it just doesn't fit yourself as much. So any advice there?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you said it exactly. It's like, how do you want to live your life? And then how does coaching fit into that? And
Mm,
that can be that coaching is your life. And that's cool too, if that's what makes you happy. But I think
right.
that's kind of what, and a lot of times you just have to try stuff and find out the hard way, that something is not what you like, because with most experiences in life, you see something, you imagine what it's like,
Mm,
but that may or may not have anything to do with the reality of it. And sometimes you only see the good stuff and you don't see the bad stuff because most people don't advertise the bad stuff. And so I think a lot of it is just trying different experiences, having the more aware you are of what probably will be effective for you is certainly helpful. Maybe save you some time, but you just kind of have to try stuff for sure.
yeah. Yeah, it's great. Last question. Are you a fan of a get out swim? And if so, do you
Uh,
have a favorite get out swim story?
I was thinking about this. Um, so there's two sides of it. As a coach, you can use this strategically. If
Hmm.
so, let's say it's a 2 hour practice. They're 90 minutes through it, and they've done a really good job, and things are really good. And there's this one person who's like doing really well. They may not be the most confident person in the world, and they need something to like get them over the hump. That's where you can do that when you're pretty dang sure that they're going to be successful. You could set them up, get the whole team behind them, and that can change someone's perspective on what's possible for them. Um, Other times, like if it's a holiday thing and you can do it like you're going to do this, because like that it's not going to be a great, or say it's like the last day before people are leaving for a holiday or whatever, and like that they're already kind of left. That can
Mm,
be another time where like you kind of do it strategically, and at least they all do something, that's pretty good. And like you can say whatever, we need 10 kids that need to do it, 8 out of the 10 have to hit it or something like that. Like that can be cool too. I don't like doing them randomly because I don't know. I kind of have a thing. I'm usually trying to do something, unless there's a really strong reason to deviate from that. I don't always like to do that. So I think it could be cool. My favorite get out swim story was, this is in college. Some guy had to do a 400 AM to get out, and like he had to go. I don't remember the time, but it was like something 0-0 that he had to go, and two coaches timed it. One of them was like 0.58 under. One of them was 0.02 over, evened out to hitting the time, and it didn't count. We had to keep going.
no.
It was
Oh man.
so that was not a positive experience, but
A
it was
successful
it was
get
a
out
funny
swim.
story in hindsight.
Yeah. What was everyone just like crushed after they made you keep going? Like were they expecting,
Yeah, I think
it to
so,
go
but it
well?
was worse for the kid that had to do it.
Yeah, for sure. Oh man.
Because now we
Yeah,
now
you
we
really
saw practice, and he's got a 400, and he went pretty fast too. Like it wasn't a soft time, and now he's got to
right.
keep going.
Yeah, man, you want it to be successful. So
Yeah,
you don't want to fail
T-
those.
yeah. To be fair, I I have not seen too many of them, so I don't have any crazy stories.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's fair. Um, all right, well, that's it for me, Andrew. I really appreciate you hopping on and sharing, what you're passionate about. I certainly took away a lot. It's stuff for me to think about as I'm coaching on a
Yeah,
day to day,
you
and
bet.
yeah, yeah. If there's anything else you'd like to add, now's the time. But other than that, it's been great.
Nope. Thanks for having me, Seamus. Appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah, of course. All right, thanks, Andrew.